What's going on, guys? So I'm about to share with you some training footage straight out of my Herculean bulking program. So this is one module out of like 50 plus training modules in the Herculean bulking program, and it's the training fundamentals module. So these are like the 5 immutable laws of drug-free training success that you have to abide by in order to build a great drug-free physique. These are like the core tenets behind the Polarity fitness training philosophy, and I have to put it out there, man. You guys have to watch this. I think this training is very, very important. It's very important information. So I hope you guys enjoy this. The first tenet here is strength gains. This is the core tenet of the core tenets of all the principles in this training routine. This is the most important thing. So building a great body is laughably simple when you are drug-free. All that matters is progressive overload in good form. You need to get very strong. That's literally the bottom line. That is really all that matters at the end of the day. Every other tenet that we're going to talk about, every principle sits atop this foundation, and that's why this comes first. So the primary driver of muscle growth in drug-free trainees is progressive overload. Progressive overload means making your muscles work harder over time. This is the only way to see positive adaptations in your physique because our bodies adapt to the stress we impose upon them. And so this little graphic here, this photo is a great representation of how training works. You load your muscles, you load your body, and then your body adapts. And then if you do things properly and you follow the rest of the tenets in this program, you should be able to come back with the ability to increase the load, to make a little bit of gains, make strength gains. And then you're gonna adapt. You're going to increase the load again, and it's just this continuous this process where you're making small bits of improvement that add up to massive gains over the long term, right? So it doesn't have to occur in every single workout, but over time you have to subject your muscles to more tension and more workload. That is the only way to see positive adaptations in your physique. And so the way we achieve this in this program is through the combination of regular weight and repetition increases, and we'll talk more about this in later modules. This is going to come down to the strength progression system, which is also a very important module that you must not skip in this program, because that's literally the difference between someone who succeeds and doesn't, is having a plan for progress, having a system in place. Because let's face it, guys, there's no shortage of people who work out. There's no shortage of people chipping away at the gym all day long, in the gym every single day. But there is a shortage of drug-free trainees moving big weights across a handful of big major compound exercises and therefore having great physiques. There's a lack of great physique development. It's because most people just go to the gym to go through the motions, have fun, feel good about themselves for having gone to the gym. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to achieve success and build a great physique, you need to have a system in place to progress, to get stronger over time. And so the 2 strength progression systems we'll talk about is the double progression method, which is basically the combination of repetition increases and weight increases. So you're going to work in a rep range, and by the time you hit the top end of the rep range, you're going to add weight. So it's the combination of both. And then there's also micro loading, which is essentially sticking with the same rep range, the same reps, but then adding small increments of weight, which are both very effective progression systems that we'll talk about in a later module. So the first thing to understand, and this is really the bottom line, the foundation of everything, when you're drug-free, there's a very strong relationship between muscle size and strength. So the biggest muscles are not always the strongest muscles, and the strongest muscles are not always the biggest muscles. But for the majority of drug-free people, there's a strong correlation between size and strength. There are other elements to consider, right? But keeping all factors constant, if you build up to bigger weights, you will build bigger muscles. So let's say you took 2 drug-free trainees and you put them side by side. The first guy on the left there, he benches 315 for 6 reps. You can see look at his triceps, look at his chest. He's obviously pretty jacked, pretty strong, right? The other guy, on the other hand, can only bench, 150, 135 for 6 reps, right? Generally speaking, who do you think is going to have a bigger chest? Who's going to have bigger triceps? Who's going to have bigger shoulders? Who's going to have more upper body muscle mass in general? Obviously, the guy benching 315. Because he's stronger, and the relationship between size and strength is prominent in every drug-free trainee. That's the bottom line. That's the fact of the matter, okay? And here's the thing to consider. The only case in which this rule no longer applies is when steroids come into play. And this right here, guys, is why most bodybuilding routines have literally no focus on gaining strength. Rather, they focus on pumping light weights for lots of volume, being in the gym all the time. And the reality is that this approach will not work for a drug-free individual. When you're natural, you have to focus on getting strong to get big. Reaching your physique potential as a drug-free trainee requires you to get very strong on compound exercises, okay? The stronger you become, the more muscle you'll have and the better you'll look. Most guys are swimming in a sea of marginal issues while neglecting the fundamental ones. Plenty of people, they've been training for years, yet they still can't squat their body weight for 5 reps. They focus on anything and everything except progressive overload on compound exercises. And if you look at this guy right here, look at what's on his mind. Look at what he's thinking about. This is what 99% of the training community and the online fitness community focuses on. You guys want to know a real important fact right here? All the stuff that this guy is thinking about, that he's obsessing over, accounts for maybe 5% of gains in the overall picture when it comes to drug-free physique building. The angles, optimal volume, sets per muscle group, time under tension, training splits, that accounts for maybe 5% of the overall gains that you will make. You know what 95% of your physique development is going to be dictated by? It's 3 things, guys. 3 things. I've been into fitness. I've been obsessed with fitness for years. Ever since I was 12 years old, I've been obsessed with fitness, building my physique. Building my physique is what allowed me to become confident. You guys know I grew up as a fat kid, right? I grew up insecure. I had a low self-esteem. Training is what allowed me to step out of my shell. It's what gave me the confidence. And it's what has allowed me to be the person I am today, right? I've been obsessed with this stuff since a young age. And you know what I've realized? It comes down to 3 core levers, guys. 3 core levers are going to dictate 95% of your physique development. And you know what they are? One of them, getting stronger, progressive overload. The next one is your calorie and protein intake. If you want to bulk, that means eating in a small calorie surplus. If you want to cut, that means eating in a small calorie deficit and then getting enough protein to support lean muscle growth. And then the last thing is just sleeping 8 to 9 hours per night. 95% of your physique development will come as a result of focusing on those 3 key levers. And you know what the fitness industry focuses on? They focus on that last 5% of what's actually going to produce gains. Last 5%. Isn't that absolutely insane, guys? These are the most popular topics in fitness online, yet they account for maybe 5% of the overall picture. You just got to get strong, guys. That's all it comes down to. Most people are focusing on anything and everything except progressive overload on compound exercises, and it's completely unnecessary. The bottom line is that you need to get stronger, and that's what this program is going to help you do. So summed up, this is probably the most important statement. This is probably the most important slide that you're going to see in this entire program. Get this tattooed on your forehead, write it down on a piece of paper, put it in your gym bag, or if you have a home gym, staple it up on the wall. Do what you have to do to remember this statement. The foundation of your muscle and strength gains will come from mastering a handful of compound exercises. These exercises must work well for you. You must be able to train them with intensity. They must cover the majority of your musculature, and you must devote yourself to getting as strong as you can at them over time and in good form. This is the foundation for building your muscle and strength. Regardless of what level of lifting you're at, this is the key approach to adopt. Let this sink in, guys. This is the bottom line. This is the fundamental summary of what it takes to build a great natural physique. So here's another thing you guys have to remember. This is the success formula for drug-free people. Progressive overload in good form, using short and infrequent routines focused on big compound exercises. This is it. Hold on to this and never let it go. This is the success formula for building a great drug-free physique. Literally, the only goal of this training program is to get you stronger month after month. That's it, guys. That's it. Everything else is secondary and only exists to help you get stronger. I'm telling you, progressive overload and strength gains, it is the core tenet of the core tenets. The rest of the tenets that we're going to be talking about are only there to help facilitate consistent progress. Progression, progression, progression. That is what counts. Getting stronger over time. So in the next module, we'll talk about your core exercises. Your core exercises are the linchpins of this training program. Your only goal is to master them and get as strong as you can at them. If you're getting stronger at what we're going to be referring to as the core exercises of this program, your physique is improving. You are a success. If you are not getting stronger over time, then your physique is not improving. And most of you have probably followed training routines up until now that haven't facilitated consistent strength gains. And that's because they are conventional bodybuilding routines that don't allow for consistent strength gains for a multitude of reasons that we're going to be talking about in some of the next tenets. But keep in mind, the quality of your physique will always be in direct proportion to how strong you get at the core exercises. At the end of the day, if you lift Mickey Mouse weights, all you're going to get is a Mickey Mouse body. The next tenet of the Polarity Fitness training philosophy is simplicity. So one of my favorite quotes from Steve Jobs is, "That's been one of my mantras, focus and simplicity. Simple can be harder than complex. You have to work hard to get your thinking clean to make it simple. but it's worth it in the end because once you get there, you can move mountains. So simplicity is a common theme throughout the entire Polarity Fitness philosophy. In terms of the macro scale, I've given you guys very few fundamental principles that you need to focus on when it comes to, sleep, nutrition, and training, right? But it also exists in the micro scale in terms of the training routines. The routines are kept very, very simple in this program. So extraordinary results will be determined by how narrow you can make your focus. So in this program, I want you to operate with a very clear sense of priority and recognize that not all things have equal importance. So the 80-20 principle asserts that a minority of inputs or efforts lead to a majority of the results or outputs. So incredible results are disproportionately created by fewer actions than most people realize. Some things matter a lot more than others, and this 20% is what we're going to be focusing on in this program. You're going to focus on the vital few things that will create disproportionate outcomes. So in regards to training, building a great physique is about focus and progression. Focus and progression, focus and progression. This should be your motto as a drug-free trainee. Muscle gains come from working hard on simple routines and staying consistent over time. Due to everybody's complexity bias, my philosophy is usually dismissed. People think like that it's too simple. There's no way. It's too good to be true. There's no way that's all there is to it. But the reality is that the reason they're thinking this is because today's experts and fitness influencers have completely overcomplicated fitness. But the reality is that building muscle and strength is not complex. The essence of building a great physique is simple: focus and progression. Right? So in the 1960s, bodybuilding drugs became popular. But in the 1950s, many of the best physiques were drug-free. This is known as the pre-steroid era of fitness, and this is where I learned a lot of the information that I teach now. Obviously, that combined with the years of trial and error that I've gone through, but I too still, sit on the shoulders of the giants that came before us, right? But a lot of the guys that I learned from, nobody knows their names nowadays. Like, it's hilarious. Like, nobody knows their names nowadays because they're most popular back in the 50s, right? So this was known as the pre-steroid era of fitness. And so the drug-assisted workout methods that are still popular today, that everybody is using, they were born in the 1960s. And that's when steroid use became popular. And where the fitness industry really went to shit is when these methods started to be promoted to the masses. They started to be promoted as this one-size-fits-all, and they were promoted to be good for the drug-free training masses. And that's when everything started to go to shit in the fitness industry, because we had, the drug-free training masses following drug-assisted workout methods. And this obviously has led to lots of disappointment, lots of frustration, lots of drug-free trainees with a complete lack of results, right? So these methods, they're very complicated, 4 to 6 workouts per week, split routines, bro splits. They use tons of different exercises and tons of training volume, tons of sets and reps. But if we look back at the pre-steroid era, this is when physiques looked the best. They had drug-free appearances that didn't scream chemical warfare, and their physiques didn't look repulsive and obsessive like they do today. And it's funny, as a side note, I ran this experiment with past girlfriends. Even I've asked my sister, my mom. I show them like modern day fitness influencer physiques, right? Or even bodybuilders. The physiques that most guys look up to nowadays. And you know what their first reaction always is? They're like, that is repulsive. That is disgusting. Like, that's way too obsessive. And it blows my mind how many guys strive to have the physiques that a lot of the fitness influencers do nowadays, a lot of the bodybuilding physiques. Because, like, guys, if a lot of guys I know are trying to get into good shape to attract women, right? To have an attractive physique to women. Well, the reality is that women find that kind of physique repulsive. Obviously, different women have different tastes. I'm sure, if that's the physique you want to go for, if you want to take drugs to achieve that physique, I'm sure that there will be women who find that attractive. But the overwhelming majority of women do not find that kind of physique attractive. Just as a side note, guys, just so you know. So, and obviously those types of physiques, the physiques you see in today's fitness industry and the fitness influencers, the online world and bodybuilding, that is not attainable drug-free, right? This is the kind of physique that looks good, and this is attainable drug-free. And this is kind of what we're going for here, right? So this is the most attractive look. So if we look back, in the pre-steroid era, the great physiques, this kind of physique, they were byproducts of sound fitness practices rather than drug abuse, because they didn't have access to the drugs that we do nowadays. The abundance, obviously, I'm not saying people didn't take drugs in the 50s and before. If they were taking them, they took them in much smaller quantities, and they didn't have the laundry list of different chemical substances that bodybuilders and fitness influencers are taking today. And so if we look back at how these guys approached fitness, they worked hard on simple routines, very simple routines. They trained 2 to 3 times per week. They focused on getting very strong at basic compound exercises. There were no fads and gimmicks, none of this crap that you see today in the fitness industry. So they focused on just getting very, very strong. And so people tend to associate complexity with being more productive. But the reality is that complicated equals unproductive. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And so I laugh when I see fitness influencers and so-called experts teaching these very complicated fitness methods, because in my opinion, the telltale sign of a true expert, someone who's mastered their field, is his ability to articulate the essence of his field or his topic with complete and utter simplicity. Amateurs make things more complicated, and professionals strive to simplify things to their essence. They understand that most things don't matter. Okay, a lot of the things that are being taught in the fitness industry today do not matter. As I said, the fitness industry focuses on the last 5% of what's actually going to create your results instead of the 95%, which is a very few things, a very few principles. As I said, it's getting strong, it's hitting the right calorie and protein intake, it's getting enough sleep. Professionals simplify things to their essence, and they focus on what matters most, and they give that their attention. They give that their focus. That's where they put the attention. And those who overcomplicate fitness, they're either trying to confuse you into buying something, or they just don't understand it themselves, quite frankly. Because as I said, people who've mastered their field, they have the ability to explain something with complete and utter simplicity, because again, they understand that most things don't really matter. Most things do not matter. And obviously, this is something that comes with time. If you're, and myself, I'm guilty of this. I tend to have a complexity bias when it comes to other topics that I'm newer to in my life, right? I automatically assume that the more complex things are, the more productive they are. But the opposite is true, guys. In pretty much any field, there's always a few basic principles that if you put all your attention, all your energy into, you're going to create disproportionate outcomes. There's always just a few things. I mean, the hard part is getting to the bottom of what those things are, but I've obviously done that work for you, so you know what to focus on, right, through following this program, right? So simple routines. With regards to training, simple routines with fewer exercises, sets, and training days are the most effective. The more complicated your routine is, the more unproductive it becomes, because you're going to be spreading your focus and energy thin and diluting the effort that you can put into that which delivers. So in this program, you're going to be keeping your focus and energy dialed in on fewer things, fewer exercises, fewer sets, and fewer training days, but you're going to apply all your focus and energy and attention into it. This way, you're not moving in all directions, which results in not moving very far at all. Instead, you're going to be moving very far in the one direction that matters most. And so let's take this example right here. This is just one example of how simplicity is used in the Polarity fitness training philosophy. So let's say you're doing 5+ exercises for a muscle group, like you see in a lot of modern day bodybuilding routines. How much progress would you make on those 5 exercises? Not very much, right? Because your ability to adapt as a drug-free person has limits. You have limited adaptational reserves. Compare that to applying all your focus and adaptational reserves to 1 or 2 exercises. You get very good at those fewer exercises, and you become very, very strong at them. You'll progress very far in that one direction in those exercises, right? So here's the thing, and this is from a book, one of my favorite books. It's called The One Thing by Gary Keller. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I've read it countless times. It's mandatory reading for anybody. It completely changed my life, right? Gary Keller says, success requires subtraction, not addition. You need to be doing fewer things for more effect instead of doing more things with side effects. So please do not dismiss these training routines because they are simple. The simplicity is where the magic lies. As Bruce Lee said, simplicity is brilliance. A lot of guys don't understand that simplicity is really the key behind making the training programs work, and they dilute the programs. They add stuff because they're under this more is better mentality. They think the more complicated the routines are, the better they are, the more productive they're going to be. But those are the same guys who don't get results. They skip over these fundamentals. They don't understand that simplicity is really the secret. Keeping the routines very simple, very focused, and not diluting your effort among so many different sets, so many different exercises. They don't understand that that's actually the key to success. And it's going to feel like you're not doing very much compared to what you're used to. But it's because you're actually focused on that which delivers. And when you're focused on that which delivers, when you understand the few things that matter most and that create disproportionate outcomes, and you're applying that 80-20 rule, you're focusing on the 20%, the few actions, the minority of actions that create the majority of the results, you're not going to have to do as much because you're approaching things as a professional. You're focusing on the essence. You're focusing on the core principles that actually deliver results. As I said, amateurs, they focus on so many different things. They dilute their focus. They dilute their energy and attention. Professionals, they simplify things. They focus on a few things, and you're gonna feel like, what the hell? Like, this is all there is? But that's the secret. If you're feeling that, that's a sign that you're on the right path. The next tenet of the Polarity Fitness training philosophy is basic. And so when I say basic, I'm referring to the exercise selection. The training routines in this program focus on basic compound exercises. So there are 4 to 8 compound exercises and a few isolation movements in every routine, and we spread them out over 2 to 3 workouts every week. You might be thinking like, Rio, what the hell, man? Like, I do more exercises than that for my chest alone. Like, this guy can't be serious. What about my inner pecs, my upper pecs, my side delts, and my rear delts? If you're in this position, if this is what you're thinking right now, I want you to take a step back and be honest with yourself. With your shirt on, is it obvious that you lift weights walking down the street? The answer is probably no. You probably don't have enough muscle mass yet to worry about specializing in certain muscle groups. And even if you've built some muscle, the quickest way to watch it wither away is to stop doing the basics, okay? The basic compound exercises are the ones that will build the substance of your physique. Isolation exercises, on the other hand, are there to plug the gaps left by the core compound movements. Most guys focus too much on isolation exercises. They focus on them to their detriment. They place too much emphasis on proportion before they've built any muscle mass. And serious muscle mass isn't built with isolation exercises. It's built with heavy compound exercises, okay? So if you want to build a world-class drug-free body, you gotta work up to these lifts right here. You gotta work up to squatting 2 times your body weight for 5 reps. Get your overhead press to your body weight for 5 reps. Deadlift 2.5 times your body weight for 5 reps. This is the sort of achievement required to reach your muscular potential. This is what we're working towards in this program. Obviously, there are other exercises. That's just an example of a few different exercises and the standards that you want to work towards. But that's what we're working towards in this program. That is what's required to reach your physique potential. You're going to have to get very, very, very strong at basic compound exercises. This is the key, guys. All right, so basic movements are not sexy in today's fitness industry. You're not going to go viral on TikTok promoting them. And solid, timeless, and reliable, they're not the sexiest terms ever, but you can rely on them to get results, man. So people nowadays, they're more attracted to new and science-based and all this crap. But what has put more muscle on more physiques than any other set of exercises? It's the basic compound exercises. They have stood the test of time. They are time proven. They have been responsible for putting lots of muscle mass, lots of strength on so many physiques over the decades, okay? And if you look back again at the pre-steroid era of fitness, when physiques were a product of sound fitness practices rather than drug abuse, and even the bodybuilders who were taking steroids back in the day, it's funny, I see a lot of guys saying, like the squat, bench press, and deadlift, like those are terrible for muscle growth. If you look at some of the best bodybuilders of all time, obviously drug-assisted bodybuilders, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ronnie Coleman, all these different guys, they focused on the basic compound movements, and they were strong, man. Lou Ferrigno, all these different guys. Frank Zane, all these different guys, they focused heavily. Their base were the basic compound movements. They had massive squats, massive deadlifts, massive bench presses. Anyone telling you that basic compound movements aren't effective muscle builders because they don't isolate any certain muscle group, it's absolutely ridiculous, guys. You'll find very few exercises better than just the basic compound movements, the non-sexy movements. You won't find better exercises than that. They're time proven, they're reliable, okay? And those are the exercises we're gonna be focused on in this program. So these are the core exercises that are my recommended core movements. So we have the squat, we have the deadlift, we have the bench press, the overhead press, rows, dips, and chin-ups. So keep in mind, I am very insistent on the need to use basic compound exercises. You have to use basic compound exercises. That's what's going to build your physique. But I am flexible in the specific selection, especially when injuries and structural limitations are present. So if there are any of the core exercises I just listed out for you that you can't perform due to injuries or structural limitations, that's okay. We'll find alternatives, right? There's a whole module dedicated to exercise alternatives if you can't perform one of those exercises. But a lot of times guys either don't want to train them because they are difficult. Yes, they're very difficult exercises, but that's what makes them the most productive. They're very difficult, and a lot of times guys just don't know the proper technique. They don't know the proper form. They may have to do some flexibility work, some mobility work in order to get the technique down. They may have to spend some time learning the proper technique, which will be handled in the exercise tutorial section. But once you understand how to perform the exercises and you have the technique down, almost everybody has the potential to reap massive rewards and the benefits that these exercises have to yield, right? So you can't build a great physique with isolation exercises using detail work. I like to think of isolation exercises as detail exercises and compound lifts as the substance builders. So you can't build a great physique using detail work. Leg extensions won't build big legs, and chest flies won't build big chests. And if you're familiar with me, you probably heard me say this so many times, but isolation exercises are the icing on top of the cake. Prioritizing isolation work is like trying to put the icing on top of the cake before you bake the cake. You have to build the substance of your physique before you concern yourself with the details, because let's be honest, guys, proportionate and symmetrical skin and bones don't look impressive. Many people concern themselves with sculpting their physiques before they have anything to sculpt. Like, you have to build up the clay, you have to build up the substance of your physique before you want to decide like how you, like the proportion and the symmetry. Because how many guys do you see in the gym every day chipping away at bicep curls and isolation exercises who literally month after month, they look the exact same, they never have any muscle, you know? So focusing excessively on isolation exercises like most guys do will prevent you from being able to apply the focus, effort, and resources needed to get big in the first place. So isolation exercises, generally speaking, they can distract you from what you need to focus on in order to get bigger and stronger and build serious muscle mass. If you do too much of them, they can rob you of your recovery and curtail your progress in the compound exercises. So the body grows as a whole when you are drug-free. This is a lost concept. This is a very well-known concept back in the pre-steroid era of fitness. Again, before steroids were so prominently used in the fitness industry, right? The body grows as one whole unit. In other words, no matter how much bicep work you do, if your body is small, you're not going to build big biceps. Again, look at any public gym. Look at the guys in the gym every single day doing bicep curl after bicep curl, 5 different exercises for their biceps, 5 for their triceps, attempting to build up all the show muscles, right? But they never build big biceps because you don't see big biceps on a small body. Look at this photo right here. Do you see that? Did you ever see that? Absolutely not. You're not going to see big biceps or any small muscle group for that matter on a small body. All right. So if you want to add 2 inches to your arms, expect to have to gain 30 pounds on the scale. Figure 15 pounds of weight gain for every inch that you want to put on your arms, as an example, right? So do you think you'll achieve this by doing bicep curls? You think you're going to put on 30 pounds by doing bicep curls? Of course not. Of course not. That's not how it works. The body grows as a whole. You have to get your body growing as one whole unit. Even if you were to increase your curl weights by 50%, it would only have a small impact on your physique. Imagine the impact if you were to increase all your basic movements by 50% for repetitions. Imagine the impact on your physique if that's what you focused on. You'd gain a lot of muscle throughout your entire body, and you would not have, there would be no lack of results, right? Imagine if there was the same interest in compound movements as there is in biceps training. No one would have an underdeveloped physique. You would not see it, okay? You have to focus on big basic movements that overload and force your body to work as one unit to build muscle. You can't treat your body as a Lego action figure and try to like isolate each muscle group and build up your physique doing that. You have to focus on the exercises that overload your entire body, that force your body to work as one whole unit to build muscle. Once you get the main muscular structures of your body growing, the rest of the body comes along a lot more easily. So you have to build up the big muscle groups of your body, such as like the legs and the back, right? Once you get the main muscular structures growing, the rest of the body is a lot more receptive, right? Even the smaller muscle groups, for example. If your legs and back, the big muscular structures are growing, even the upper body pushing structure, the little muscle groups that all the guys focus on, they come along naturally, and they'll also be more receptive to any isolation work that you throw at them. This is a lost concept in today's fitness industry, but this is how it works when you're drug-free. And the guys back in the pre-steroid era of fitness, they understood this, right? So developing the legs and the back, it's the base for growth throughout the entire body. So for example, if your squat and deadlift improve, so does the growth potential everywhere else. If you want big arms and shoulders, you need to ensure that your leg and back structures are growing because again, the body grows as a whole. We include isolation exercises, don't get me wrong, they're important. You can develop imbalances and it's not necessarily beneficial to completely exclude isolation exercises, but the point is that a lot of guys focus on them to their detriment and they rob themselves of their recovery and their focus that they could be putting into the compound exercises, which are actually what's going to produce really good physique development. So you're gonna include them in your program, but we're gonna do not many of them. And you're going to do them at the end of your workout after you've given your all to the real exercises. You know, when you've applied all the focus, all the attention into the exercises that are actually going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. Then you're going to throw in a little bit of icing on top of the cake, a little bit of isolation work for the muscle groups that need it. Because again, isolation exercises, they're meant to plug the gaps left by the core compound movements. And a lot of times there are some muscle groups that are going to lag behind that can create imbalances, not only in the aesthetic of your physique, but they can create injuries. If certain muscle groups are imbalanced and not developed, you can develop sort of injuries injuries and tendonitis, different things like that, right? So we include them, but you're going to do them after you've given your all to the basic movements. That's what's going to produce your physique development. Never forget that. So as you're going through the program, always remember, always think of those guys who go into the gym, start their workout with concentration curls, and then do 5 other bicep curls after that, and never build a great physique, right? Remember that isolation exercises, they're the passengers relative to the main driver of growth, which is the core compound exercises, the basic movements that we're going to be prioritizing in this program and getting you very strong at. Remember that the quality of your physique will always be in direct proportion to how strong you are at the core basic compound exercises. The next tenet of the Polarity Fitness training philosophy is low volume and low frequency. So the Polarity Fitness training routines are very abbreviated relative to bodybuilding routines. You'll be training just 2 to 3 times per week on non-consecutive days. You'll be doing 4 to 8 exercises per workout for just 2 to 3 hard sets each. And the sessions usually last 45 to 90 minutes. So we keep the training volume low for 2 primary reasons. The first reason is to give you the ability to train hard enough to stimulate muscle growth. The more sets you do, the less likely you are to train hard enough. Doing a lot of volume typically means spreading yourself thin and diluting the effort you give to each set. And the second reason is to give you plenty of recovery between workouts and make consistent strength gains. So everything always ties back into progressive overload and gaining strength. And simply put, it's much easier to get strong on a low volume approach than a high volume approach. And so 4 or more workouts per week have little to no potential for producing gains for most drug-free people, no matter how dedicated the person is or how much they eat and sleep. Most drug-free people end up going through the motions in their workouts when they train 4+ days a week, and thus they are unable to train hard enough to stimulate muscle and strength gains. And if they can train hard enough to stimulate muscle growth, they still only have 3 or fewer recovery days per week, which means that their bodies cannot grow in response to the stimulus that they create in the gym. You might get a nice pump, you might be hitting the muscle from all different angles, you might be doing the optimal amount of training volume, but if you're bench pressing 135 pounds right now for 5 reps, and in a year's time you're still benching 135 pounds for 5 reps, you're not going to have gained muscle despite all the time you're spending in the gym, despite all the angles and all this different crap you're doing, right? So we all know guys who are in the gym 5 to 7 days per week who lift the same weights month after month. They look the same month after month, and sooner or later they throw in the towel. And this is why they disagree that progressive overload is the most important training consideration, and they dismiss low volume training as too simple to work. These are the same people who will forever spin their wheels and never get around to building any significant muscle and strength. Instead of focusing on progressive overload and just doing a low volume approach, they focus on theory, optimization, minor details, and literally anything and everything except the importance of moving big weights in good form. So the focus needs to be on getting strong, and the best way to achieve this is through low volume training. The more is better mentality is the single biggest factor hurting the physique progress of drug-free people. Our society has conditioned us to believe that the more we do, the more we get. Work longer hours, get a bigger paycheck, study more, get better grades, work out more, make better gains. But due to our body's limited ability to recover as drug-free people with lives outside of the gym, this isn't the case with weight training. In most endeavors, practice makes perfect. If you want to learn to play the piano, for example, practice and then practice some more. Practice as much as you can. Fall asleep drooling on the keys and wake up with your fingers in place to begin playing again. But with weight training, the point of diminishing returns comes quickly. It's our very enthusiasm for lifting weights that ruins progress. We train too often, we include too many different exercises, and we grind ourselves into the ground doing too many sets of each. So training too much is not as forgiving as excessively practicing the pianos. We don't get sore fingers from a training obsession. We exhaust our ability to recover and we injure ourselves, right? So at best, progress stalls, but at worst, our bodies break down, injuries pile up, and we are forced to take time off. So bodybuilders will succeed following the train more to gain more approach, but bodybuilders are also on steroids and have incredible genetics for bodybuilding. As a result, they aren't the role models to mimic when you are drug-free. So the recovery ability of a drug-free person has limits. Our ability to recover from a hard training session is much less than a steroid user. And so it's tragic how many drug-free people have quit working out due to a lack of results, or worse, turned to steroids to make their training programs work. So when drug-free people follow bodybuilding methods, they have to take steroids to succeed. And if you don't believe me, take a look around your gym. The shortage of impressive drug-free bodies should more than speak for itself. So judging by how much time people spend in the gym, you would think that's where all the magic happens, right? Wrong. You grow muscle and strength outside of the gym, when you're resting, when you're recovering. The goal of training is to stimulate muscle growth, not annihilate. You want to do enough work to stimulate muscle and strength gains, but no more. And this is where bodybuilding routines go wrong. Bodybuilding routines leave you feeling exhausted after every single workout, and the reality is that drug-free people can't recover and grow stronger with these protocols. And so to achieve the fastest muscle growth as a drug-free trainee, you need to string together progressive workouts over a long period of time. And what I mean by this is that in every workout or every other workout, you want to make small bits of progress. These small bits of progress put a lot of muscle mass on you over time. To achieve this consistent progress, you have to recover between every single workout. Remember, we build muscle and strength during the recovery process. So if you don't recover between workouts, it means you trained beyond your ability to recover. So that's the last thing you want. And that's the reason why bodybuilding routines do not work well for drug-free people, is that it pushes them to train beyond their ability to recover. And as a result, they can't recover between workouts. They can't enter the gym fresh every time they train, and therefore they cannot make consistent progress. So if you don't come back with the ability to make a little bit of progress, that means that your body could not grow and adapt in response to the stimulus that you created in the gym. So the key when you're drug-free is to train within your ability to recover. And again, bodybuilding routines push you to train beyond your ability to recover. And bodybuilders can handle this. They can handle this tremendous workout frequency, this tremendous workout volume, because anabolic steroids, bodybuilding drugs, PEDs, they give you superhuman recovery abilities, but the drug-free person will overtrain using these protocols. Overtraining means no muscle and strength gains. And honestly, most of the time, overtraining actually causes you to lose muscle and strength. So when you train within your ability to recover, every time you enter the gym, you will feel fresh. And this is the key. When you feel fresh for every workout, you can make consistent progress. So this means doing a small quantity of hard work in the gym. You want to do the least amount of training volume that you need to stimulate muscle growth, and then you want to get out of the gym, rest, recover, and come back a little bit stronger. This is the key, guys. So it's not what you do in the gym that counts. It's what you can recover from. You can work out a lot, but you'll only ever actually grow from what your body can recover from, which in reality is not that much if you're drug-free and have normal genetics. On top of this, you have a life outside of the gym that cuts into your recovery abilities, and simply put, mainstream bodybuilding routines won't allow you enough recovery, guys. So due to steroids and elite genetics, bodybuilders thrive with this live in the gym approach, with this gym rat lifestyle, but it will completely fail the average drug-free person with normal genetics who has a life outside of the gym. This is the key, guys. This is why we do a low volume of training. That's why we do a low frequency of training. It's to facilitate consistent strength gains, and it's to allow us to step into the gym with the ability to train hard enough to stimulate muscle growth. Because the more we do, the more our effort's diluted, the more we have to dilute our intensity, our effort to get through the training session. And therefore, we end up either not being able to train hard enough to stimulate muscle growth, or we just can't recover between workouts due to all the volume. And therefore, we can't string together progressive workouts where we are consistently getting stronger. The final tenet of the Polarity Fitness training philosophy is hard work or high intensity. So to succeed with a low volume and low frequency training approach, you have to train hard. Training hard means taking every set in the gym very close to failure. So training intensity is kind of this arbitrary term that's thrown around a lot in the fitness industry. But what intensity means is just how close you take every set to failure. That's all it means. It's that simple. So training to failure means taking a set to the point where with good form, you cannot move the bar for one more rep. If you can do one more rep at the end of a set in good form, you haven't hit true failure. If you could not do one more rep if your life depended on it, then you've hit what's called momentary failure. So most people's failure point is actually 3 to 5 reps shy of their true failure point. Most people do not know what hard training is, and this is why they cannot fathom training just twice per week. They've never experienced pushing close to their true failure point. If they trained hard, they wouldn't be able to be in the gym for more than 2 to 3 workouts every week. So one of my favorite quotes from Arthur Jones, he said, "You can train long or you can train hard, but you cannot do both." So there are two methodologies in the training world. There's high volume, low intensity training, and there's low volume, high intensity training. You'll notice that there's no such thing as high volume, high intensity training and low volume, low intensity training. And that's because when you're drug free, there's a trade-off you have to make when it comes to volume versus intensity. When you're doing a low volume of training, you have to make up for the low volume with a high intensity of training. You have to put more effort into the reduced amount of training that you're doing. So this is where the Polarity fitness training approach sits due to recovery and strength gains. And you'll know that if you studied the previous tenets. When you use a high volume approach, you have to lower your training intensity. You cannot train as hard because you have more exercises and sets to get through. You have to dilute your effort to get through it all. And what happens is that you'll end up going through the motions. This is the conventional bodybuilding approach, and it does not work for most drug-free people. This style of training is very, very fatiguing and will cause overtraining. And again, overtraining means no strength gains. So it's going to prevent you from being able to train hard enough to stimulate muscle and strength gains. Doing a lot of volume in the gym means spreading yourself thin and diluting the effort that you give to each set. Training intensity can replace training volume to a large degree. The harder you train, the less training you need to stimulate muscle and strength gains. To see the best results, you need adequate volume and intensity. But when your training intensity is high, you need far less volume than what most people have led you to believe in the fitness industry. The better approach to take when you are drug-free is to focus on intensity over volume, or in other words, effort over quantity. When you do less, you have better recovery and it's easier to gain strength. You can put more effort into your training and stimulate more muscle and strength gains. Best of all, you can spend less time in the gym, of course, right? So less is more for drug-free trainees. This is very important. Effective training is about quality, not quantity. You only need a low volume of quality training to stimulate lots of muscle growth. Everyone would literally 10x their gains if they cut their training volume in half, doubled the rest days between workouts, and got serious about delivering real effort in a reduced amount of training time. So when you're pushing to get stronger week in and week out, you will discover why so few people have great physiques. The reality is that intense training is hard work. So you'll only be training twice per week, 3 times max on this training program. But the training you'll be doing is no walk in the park. So this is nothing like the going through the motions training that you might be used to. Remember, to compensate for the lower training volume, you have to make every single set count. Building a great physique, it requires determination. It's about pushing your body to go further and further. It's the slow but steady accumulation of the bit more that adds up to big gains over time. Hard training is uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable, and you are responsible for pushing yourself through it. The buck stops with you. Insufficient effort in the gym is a big reason why most people don't get the body they desire. But there are plenty of people who do train hard enough and still lack great physique development. Why is that? They fall short in the other recovery factors. So you have to get all the other support factors right to reap the benefits of hard training. You have to eat, sleep, and rest enough. And remember always that physique success comes from applying the total package of proper training, nutrition, and recovery. You cannot compensate for a deficiency in one area with an excess in another. So for example, you can't just train hard and have your training program dialed in and then neglect your recovery and your nutrition. You will not achieve the results you're going for. It's a total package that you have to apply at all times. It's an interdependent system. So you have to avoid an intensity fixation. Many people believe training intensity is the be-all end-all, but the reality is that it is a means to an end. We use intensity to achieve progression. This belief comes from guys like Mike Mentzer and Dorian Yates. They were bodybuilders who popularized high intensity training, right? And don't get me wrong, you'll have to train about 10 times as hard as the average gym goer to see the success you want with your physique. There's no getting around that. If you look at the effort that most people are bringing in the gym, it's an absolute joke and they'll never get anywhere with that amount of effort. Hard work and high intensity, they are a linchpin of effective training. Most people simply do not train hard enough, but high intensity is not the end in and of itself. It is a means to an end. Training hard for the sake of training hard is absolutely useless. We train with high intensity in order to achieve progression. High intensity is not the bottom line. Progressive overload is. The value of bringing high levels of intensity is not the effort per se. What counts is the progressive overload that the high intensity can produce. And this is so key, guys. So key. Pushing yourself to the absolute limit will not in itself make you bigger and stronger. The hard work you do in the gym will only produce gains if you meet your recovery needs. And then obviously avoid injuries, avoid overtraining. And that's what's going to allow you to produce the progressive overload over time, which is what counts. Remember, it's all about progression. So a common practice among high intensity believers is the use of intensity heightening techniques, right? They use forced reps, drop sets, and negatives. The purpose of these techniques is simply to push beyond momentary failure. So these will do more harm than good and cause you to overtrain, which will prevent you from achieving progressive overload over time. So train hard, but avoid overtraining. Then when you leave the gym, you will feel fatigued and well worked, but not exhausted. So this is super key, guys. A lot of people think that they need to go into the gym and just absolutely destroy themselves and feel exhausted. But the reality is that you want to do just enough work to stimulate growth and then get out of the gym. That's it. This way you can get around to growing from the stimulus that you create in the gym instead of just struggling to recover from the workout itself. So high intensity training uses a low volume of training, but you can still overtrain. If you push beyond your recovery ability, it's as ineffective as a high volume bodybuilding approach. So you never want to annihilate yourself. It is very much possible to overtrain using a low volume and low frequency approach. So remember that the key is to do enough work to stimulate muscle growth and then get out of the gym and recover. And then you want to come back the next workout or every other workout with the ability to make small leaps in strength. Progressive overload is the measure of progress, not intensity, okay? Again, progressive overload is the measure of progress. A lot of people think that they can just go into the gym and the fact that they train hard means that they were successful. But no, if you're not stringing together progressive workouts, it doesn't matter if you're training hard. You can train yourself into the ground but not train progressively. It's very much possible to do, and that's not what we're going for. We're going for progression. So driving yourself to exhaustion in every single workout invites inevitable stagnation and regression. So now we need to talk about the art of conservatism. And this is one of the most important topics that I've ever uncovered in my fitness journey. And it's probably the most important but underlooked topic that's going to allow you to achieve consistent progression and really stay in this game for the long term and have longevity when it comes to building your physique. So there's a sweet spot you have to hit when it comes to training, when it comes to pushing your sets, right? You want to push yourself hard, but don't destroy yourself. And this means avoiding forced reps, drop sets, negatives, and like grinders where you're grinding out that last rep and really destroying yourself. So in any given set, you want to finish strong. You never want to actually fail the set. This is really, really important. And I'm guilty of doing this. It happens once in a while. Sometimes you misjudge and then you end up failing a set. And like once in a while, it's okay if it happens. But the reality is that consistently doing that will lead to zero progress. You're going to stagnate. You're going to hurt yourself. It's not the way you want to go. You never want to actually fail the set. You never want to push the set to the point where you can't actually move the bar and you have to, drop it or you have to put it on the racks like what you see that I did in this photo right here in the bench press. So push the set to where you have 0 reps left in you or 1 rep left if you had to grind it out. This is really, really important. So you don't want to leave the set at where you have like 2 to 3 reps left in the tank. That's not going to stimulate the most amount of muscle growth, especially when you're doing a low volume of training. You have to make sure that every set is pushed pretty much to the bleeding edge. But there's that little sweet spot that you don't want to cross over where you're actually failing the set. So push it to where you have 0 reps left in you, like you couldn't move the bar for 1 more concentric, you couldn't press it for 1 more rep. Don't ever push that last rep where you're going to fail. Leave it before that. Or if you want to err on the side of conservatism, if you want to be a little bit more careful, then leave it at the point where you have 1 rep left in you, if you had to grind it out. So pushing a set to where you fail will destroy your recovery for no extra benefit. And so a lot of people don't realize that it's not necessary to fail the set to stimulate gains. You're not going to get any extra benefits in the way of muscle and strength by pushing the set beyond that 0 to 1 reps in reserve position. You never want to push past that. So what it does is it prevents you from progressing over time. And so if you fail a set, it means you are leaving no room to progress in the next workout. And there's no way to progress from a failed set. If you couldn't do it in the given workout, there's no way you're going to somehow progress and push past that in the next workout. It doesn't work like that. The body can only adapt so quickly. So you want to leave a little bit in you for the next workout. Remember that the key is to string together progressive workouts, not train yourself into the ground. This requires practicing the art of conservatism. and this comes with time, right? So conservatism is essentially just knowing when to hold back a little bit. Simply put, it's knowing when to hold back. And so it takes time to understand your body and gauge how many reps you actually have left in you during a set. And so you have to get to the point where you actually understand like what you have left in you during a set. Practicing conservatism allows you to keep a steady rate of strength gains in the gym. That's the key. That's why conservatism is so powerful. It allows you to keep a consistent and steady rate of progress. So imagine you're in a heavy set of bench presses, and this is my favorite illustration to use right here. So the goal is to get 6 reps. You reach the 5th, and you are unsure of whether that 6th rep is possible. There's a 50-50 chance of success. You might get it, you might not, right? Conservatism means racking the bar at that 5th rep. And sure, you might have gotten the 6th rep, but you also might have failed it and set yourself back. And so everyone is in such a rush to make progress, but the reality is that the long road is the fastest road when it comes to lifting. Guess what? If you leave the set at that 5th rep, you'll get the 6th in the next workout. If you went for the 6th when you were not ready, and you would have failed it, and you'd have either stagnated or regressed, and then you would have come back in the next workout and you probably would have dropped down in strength, all because of a lack of patience. So whenever I fail a set, it's very rare. I don't even maintain my performance for the next workout. It always drops down, and that's the last thing you want, man. All because of a lack of patience. It's ridiculous. You don't get any benefit by failing that last rep. So it's better to err on the side of conservatism. This way you can create gaining momentum and ensure that every 1 to 2 weeks you are going up in strength.